Story 1. The Girl in the Rain. I'm Jake, a long-haul trucker, and my job is to face loneliness. Tonight, that loneliness was amplified by the incessant rain. I was driving a refrigerated truck hauling Washington apples, speeding southbound on Interstate 5 I-5, somewhere between Portland and the California border. The rain poured down in sheets, turning the highway into a slick, black, shimmering mirror. It was past 2 a.m. The fog was thick, like a giant hand suffocating the light from my headlights, hugging the ancient Oregon pine forest that pressed right up against a shoulder. I was running on caffeine, exhaustion, and silent self-admonitions. Keep going, Jake, just make it to the next way station. The fatigue made my head spin. I started seeing things that weren't there on the roadside, a figure darting by, an old long-abandoned car. But then, what I saw next was very real. So real it tore through my layer of reason. It was a small figure standing beneath the dripping, sickly yellow neon light of an abandoned roadside diner. The rusted sign reading Diner 24/7 was dark, leaving only the flashing advertising light, which intermittently illuminated a pathetic figure. The girl, I guess no older than 18, was soaked to the bone in a thin red hoodie, her hair plastered to her pale face. She held up a piece of cardboard with Sacramento written on it in faded marker. Don't. Absolutely don't. The familiar warning voice of an old trucker echoed in my head. Picking up hitchhikers on this stretch of I-5 is suicide. Too many stories about scammers, road robbers, or worse, the phantom hitchhikers that had become urban legends. The nearest town, Ashland, was over 50 miles back. The sight of her shivering, pale face in the cold, wet dark struck a nerve. I live by rules, but tonight, compassion won. I tapped the horn lightly and pulled the massive rig to a stop. The girl scrambled into the cab quickly. There was the rattle of metal and a grateful, ragged gasp. Thank you, sir, she said, her teeth chattering. I'm Alara. I lost my ride, just trying to get to family in Sacramento. I introduced myself as Jake. In the dashboard's dim light, I tried to observe her. Alara was skinny, looking like a little bird caught in the rain. The smell of damp earth, mildew, and a faint metallic scent, like rusty iron, filled the cab. Why are you out here alone? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. I argued with my boyfriend, she replied, her voice trembling but sounding a little theatrical. He left me here. I had no other choice. I nodded, trying not to judge. I hit the gas. The truck roared back to life, and we continued the journey. Alara sat in silence for a while, hugging herself tightly. Then, she started asking strange questions. Have you ever seen lost drivers out here, sir? Do you know which sharp curves cause the most accidents? Mr. Jake, have you ever seen a shadow following your truck? Her questions were not the innocent curiosities of a young girl. They sounded like probing, or even hints. I offered a forced laugh. The road is honest, kid. It's the people you gotta watch out for. For a moment, my eyes flickered to Alara. The dashboard light shone on her eyes, but they didn't reflect back. Her eyes were dark, almost completely black, like two deep holes absorbing all the light. A chill ran down my spine, colder than the outside air. The deeper we drove into the Siskiyou Mountains, the more uneasy I felt. The trees along the road grew denser, taller, like bony fingers obscuring the sky. Alara wasn't sleeping. She just stared intently at the small GPS screen in my truck, sometimes muttering numbers as if calculating something. I turned on the radio, trying to find a news channel or old country music to break the suffocating silence. Don't listen to music now, sir, Alara suddenly said, this time without the tremble. Her voice was flat, almost mechanical. You need to concentrate. I am always concentrated, I replied, slightly annoyed. I've been running this route for years. True, she said, turning her face toward me. But tonight is different. Tonight, they are waiting. Who is waiting? Alara didn't answer. She just offered a smile, one utterly devoid of warmth, possessing only coldness and a hint of mockery. I felt like I had just entered a game whose rules I didn't know. I tried to return to the original conversation, Sacramento. Family. Why she had to run away. She recounted a conflicting story about an abusive stepfather, but then said she was looking for an aunt she had never met. The story changed rapidly, devoid of emotion, like an actress trying to remember her lines. Exhaustion and fear began to merge, making me doubt myself. Was I imagining things? Or was this girl simply a wandering psycho? We were at the most dangerous bend of the Siskiyou past a steep, lonely road with no phone signal. That's when Alara abruptly gripped my arm. Stop the truck, she whispered, her voice terribly tense. Ahead, across both lanes of the highway, a large deer lay motionless. It looked like a collision, but there was no blood or skid marks on the wet road. The scene was too perfect. No other cars? No way, I muttered. This is a deer trap. I've heard about it. We have to check on it. Alara insisted, the strength in her small hands surprising me. It might still be alive. We have to help it. I'm calling the highway patrol, I said, reaching for the CB radio mic. I'm not stopping here. That's the rule. I knew too well that this was the usual tactic for highway robbers. Distract the driver away from the cab. I keyed the mic. Dispatch, this is Blackjack on I-5 South. Possible large animal obstruction near mile marker 43. Sending coordinates ... No. Ilara screamed, the sound piercing and sharp, making me flinch. It wasn't the shriek of a scared girl, but the raw, repressed sound of fury ... And then, the betrayal happened. Her hand didn't grab the mic, but her small, decisive fist slammed right onto the kill switch on the dashboard. Click. The massive truck died instantly. The headlights went out. The engine ceased its roar. The entire cab plunged into terrifying silence and darkness, broken only by the hiss of the rain. You should have stopped when I asked, the girl whispered, her voice now deep, cold, and echoing as if she wasn't the person sitting next to me anymore. In the blinding darkness, I saw it. Not one, but two massive dark shadows sprung up from the ditch by the roadside. They were running toward my cab, holding something long and glinting like a steel pipe. Adrenaline exploded in me. Fear was replaced by rage. I wasn't easy prey. I wrestled with the kill switch, trying to flip it back on. Ilara started screaming, not the shriek of a bandit, but the wailing cry of despair and primal fury. She pounded the dashboard, clawed at my arm. You can't take me there. They'll catch me. She screamed, her face contorted, devoid of any trace of the innocent girl in the rain. Finally, the engine whined, then roared. Restarting. I didn't bother looking at the road. I floored the accelerator. The multi-ton truck shook and surged forward, aiming straight for the shadow of the deer. Crash. A horrible collision sound. It wasn't just soft flesh, but something hard, metal. I heard a man scream, echoing in the rain. Swallowed by the engine's roar. Asterisk. I tried to push Ilara off, but she clung to the seat, her fingernails scraping a deep welt into my biceps, tearing through my jacket. Blood seeped out, but I didn't feel the pain. I only felt disgust. Do you want to die, old man? She yelled, tears streaming down her face. Yet those dark eyes maintained a terrible coldness. I looked in the rearview mirror. The two shadows were trying to chase, but my truck was too fast. I knew Eureka was just a few miles away. I had to survive. I no longer believed in anything except speed and steel. I kept the pedal down, driving frantically as the rain gradually subsided. When I saw the flashing blue and red lights of the Eureka checkpoint, I exhaled a sigh of relief so deep I nearly fainted. I braked hard, leaped out of the cab, shoved my logbook at the approaching officer, and screamed, She tried to kill the engine. They were waiting. Instantly, Ilara burst into tears, fake but perfect, streaming down her beautiful face. He kidnapped me. He wouldn't stop. I just wanted to go home. She was a masterful actress, but the officer, a seasoned man with tired eyes, didn't flinch. He looked at the claw marks on my arm, then at Ilara's clean, untainted hands. Her performance was too perfect, to the point of being suspicious. A quick background check. Ilara was not an innocent lost girl. She was a 19-year-old runaway with a clear criminal record for staging highway robberies, specializing in using female decoys. They were armed. The deer trap was a case waiting to happen. Everything was resolved under the cold, harsh neon light of the checkpoint. Ilara was led away, but her final gaze toward me was not that of a loser, but of an enemy who had been inconvenienced. I got back on the road hours later. The rain had completely stopped, but the I-5 was permanently ruined in my mind. I never stopped for anyone again. A week later, when I brought the truck to the maintenance yard, the mechanic called me over. Jake, something strange here. He pointed to the truck's grill. We found a small piece of cloth, red, wedged deep inside. Looks like it's from a hoodie. I nodded, shuddering at the memory. Maybe it was from one of the robbers I had slammed into. And also, the mechanic whispered. We found a very deep scratch on the paint, right beneath the passenger door. It's not from a tree branch. It looks like, Klaus. I looked down. Beneath the mud and oil, a long stark white scratch marred the blue paint. It was exactly like the scratch on my arm, deep and sharp. But the most terrifying thing was this. The police later reported that my truck had actually slammed into an overturned concrete mile marker on the road, not one of the robbers. The deer was gone, and there were no traces of the two shadows. So, if I didn't hit anyone, whose scream of pain did I hear? And who clawed my arm when Ilara's fingernails were clean and neatly trimmed? I closed the truck door and kept driving. I knew one thing for certain. Out here on the I-5, the real danger doesn't come from captured highway robbers. It comes from the inexplicable things, the things that just smile and ask for a ride. And it leaves scars that never fade, even when it's just a small girl in the rain. Story 2. The Cursed Frequency. My name is Jack. For 20 years, my Peterbilt has been home. An I-70, the road slicing through the endless plains of Colorado, has been my backyard. Tonight, I was on a dead run, hauling a specialized load expensive prototype server equipment from Kansas City to Denver. This was a priority shipment, no delays allowed. It was past 2 a.m. The outside temperature gauge read 4 degrees Celsius. Eastern Colorado stretched out like an empty, infinite sheet of black velvet, with no light but the cold stars. The only sound in the cab was the steady drone of the engine and the comfortable, familiar hiss of the CB radio. Tuned to channel 19. I had just finished my last sandwich and was sipping my third coffee. Everything was dull, quiet, until the familiar static was cut short. Breaker, breaker, heavy-duty tandem, chrome stacks shining. You copy that. Driver, I frowned. The voice cut through the noise, clear and cold as an Arctic wind. It wasn't a local voice, nor the familiar tone of other truckers. What worried me was the precise description. My Peterbilt was custom, but being called out by specific details, in the middle of nowhere, and this late at night, was unprecedented. I reached for the mic, slightly hesitant. This is Road Dog. Go for Road Dog. The reply came instantly, low and unsettling, like dry leaves scraping pavement. Just saw you pass exit 359. Nice Peterbilt. That load of yours looks heavy. Must be worth a fortune. My stomach nodded. The last exit I'd passed was at least 20 minutes ago. Appreciate it. You need something, partner? I asked, my caution rising. A slow, chilling chuckle answered me. Nah, just admiring. You alone tonight. No co-driver in the sleeper. Solo run. I clipped out. Stay safe out there. I hung the mic back on its clip, my heart starting to thump against my ribs. I turned the volume down, but I couldn't turn off the rising dread. 5 minutes of silence. I tried to reassure myself, must be another driver with a powerful rig, who passed me at the Lemon stop dot, but then, the CB flared again. Road Dog, you just got new mud flaps, didn't you? Real shiny. Wouldn't want those getting ripped off on a bumpy road. Asterisk, asterisk, my eyes widened. My mud flaps were brand new, installed in Oklahoma 2 days ago. Unless someone was right behind my truck with their high beams trained on them, no one could have noticed that detail. I checked my mirrors. Every shadow suddenly looked too deep, too solid. Nothing but empty road. Who is this? I demanded into the mic. Are you following me? The chuckle was back. Closer now, a wet, scraping sound in the speaker. Maybe I'm ahead. Why don't you pull off at the next service area, and we can chat about that Peterbilt? Not happening. I snarled. Come on. The voice softened, shifting into an enticing, terrifying whisper. I know you're tired. I saw you rub your eyes back at the Lemon stop. I saw you call your wife 3 times tonight. Her name is Sarah, right? She's worried about your son Billy and his college tuition. I can tell you stories about this stretch of highway. Stories that will keep you awake forever. A cold sweat broke out on my neck. He wasn't just tracking me on the road. He had been there. He had been watching me in the cab. He had listened to my personal calls. My hand trembled as I gripped the steering wheel. I pushed the throttle down, the engine roaring in protest as I hit 80 miles per hour. The CB radio began to wildly distort, not with ordinary static, but with an agonizing, repeating sound of shrieking and squealing. No need to rush. Jack, the voice whispered, this time calling me by name. Time doesn't matter to me. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about the valuable server equipment in the refrigerated trailer. But I care about you more. Jack, I care about your loneliness. What do you want? I screamed. I want you to stop. I want you to admit it. You're driving alone, not because it's a solo run, but because no one wants to ride with you, right? Sarah is about to leave you too. Jack, what did she say when you called the 3rd time? She said, I don't know if we can do this anymore. My throat was dry. I had turned off the mic, but the voice still crept into my mind. Not just from the CB speaker, but from somewhere deep in the darkness of the cab. That exact phrase was what Sarah had said. No one could have heard it. Suddenly, headlights appeared in my rearview mirror, approaching with terrifying speed. A sleek, dark SUV, no taillights, no license plate, its high beams flickering in a distorted, rhythmic flash. The CB exploded. See me now, Road Dog. Nice and close. The SUV surged forward, creeping alongside my trailer, then edged closer, forcing me toward the guardrail. I braced myself, gripping the wheel, ready to fight the trailer's sway. This was a professional road pirate. Back off. I'm calling the state patrol. I yelled, even though I knew my phone had been out of range for miles. Oh, but you are stopping, the voice cooed. Pull over, and let me see what priceless electronics you're hauling. Fear turned into pure, cold adrenaline. He didn't just want the cargo. He wanted dominance. He wanted to prove he could control me. I looked ahead. A beacon, deer trail rest area for miles. If I could make it to lights and people, I might survive. I floored it. Asterisk, asterisk, the SUV dropped back, then slammed into my rear bumper. The force of the impact snapped my neck back. Stop that. I screamed into the mic. That's the idea, he said. The cool detachment, terrifying. Pull over or I'll make you. He surged alongside the trailer again, and this time I heard the sound of metal scraping metal. He was trying to breach the cargo lock. He wasn't a man. He was a predator. As I approached the deer trail exit, the voice on the CB began to change. It was no longer a human voice, but a distorted chord of shrieks, whispers, and the sound of childish giggling. You can't run, Jack. Did you think you escaped your mother? Did you think you could bury that rainy night in Akron? You're a betrayer. She gave you everything. The memory flooded back. One I had locked away in my heart for 40 years. My mother, the rain, and the small lie that led to her accident. This was impossible. No one knew that. I took the exit ramp at a reckless speed, the tires screaming their protest. The SUV followed an unrelenting shadow. I pulled into the small parking lot, slammed on the air brakes, and grabbed my trusty tire iron. The SUV stopped 100 feet away. The door opened. A tall, lean man stepped out, his face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He walked slowly. "Get out, road dog. We need to talk," he called. His voice, now off the radio, yet just as rough and cold. I held my breath, pressing the phone to my ear, pretending to call 911. "Stay back. I'm on the phone with the police." He smiled, a dark, unpleasant twist of the lips. He pulled out a long, wicked-looking knife that gleamed under the rest area lamp. "Cops out here. You'll be bones before they show." I was about to charge out, but just then, another truck horn blared. A massive freightliner sped into the parking lot, revving its engine and blaring its horn like a thunderclap. The driver, a huge man with a thick beard, jumped out, yelling, "Hey, what's going on over here?" The road pirate froze. His predatory smile was replaced by a look of sheer frustration. He tucked the knife away, scrambled back into his SUV, and sped away into the black Colorado night. "You all right, buddy?" the other driver asked, his flashlight sweeping the area. "That guy looked like pure trouble." I nodded, the shaking not stopping. "Thanks for stepping in. You saved my life." We waited for the state patrol together. They later confirmed the man was a known suspect, targeting high-value cargo. I continued driving on I-70, but my CB is always off at night now. However, the ordeal didn't end there. A few weeks later, I received a small parcel. Inside was an old burnt-out volume knob, pulled directly from ACB radio, though I had never taken my truck in for repairs. Attached was a small white card. "Hello, Jack. You can't turn off the frequency. I'm always listening. I know about Akron. I know about Sarah. I'll be waiting for you at the next service area." Since that night, I wake up regularly at 2:07 a.m. That is the exact moment I first heard the voice. And sometimes, when I park in a quiet spot and shut down the engine, I still hear that familiar, gentle hiss in the absolute silence. "Breaker, breaker. You copy that, driver?" It doesn't come from the speaker. It comes from inside the cab. It comes from inside me. The road pirate was just a cover. The true entity lurking on I-70 is the curse of the listener, an entity that feeds on the secrets and loneliness of truck drivers. It didn't need my cargo. It needs my soul.
Story 3. The Highway Haunters. There is nothing better than a night drive, especially during the warm summer months. I love cruising along the deserted highways surrounding New England, near the Massachusetts border, where the city lights fade and only the starry sky and the rush of wind remain. Tonight, I was behind the wheel of my uncle's jet black Porsche 911 Carrera S. It's more than just a car. It's a piece of German engineering, a growling beast I always yearned to unleash on the straight, empty stretches of road. The night was perfect. The air was warm, but the cool blast from the Porsche's climate control was enough to keep my mind sharp. My ears were solely focused on the glorious sound of the six-cylinder boxer engine and the aerodynamic hiss of the wind slicing past the car's body. I was moving at a speed that would surely earn me a license suspension if caught, but it didn't matter. On this desolate highway, I was the king of speed. Around midnight, as I was passing through a densely wooded stretch, a sudden and intense compulsion seized me. It wasn't a fleeting thought, but an irresistible command, like a fever or annoying hunger deep inside. I had to turn off the highway. I had to find the dark, winding back roads to fully appreciate the car's handling. It was incredibly strange, almost supernatural. As I always stick to my planned routes, I spotted an exit near an old neighborhood, an area I had never heard of. The sign read, Maple Street. I took the exit. The sparse highway lights abruptly gave way to a dense, profound darkness, torn only by the glare of the Porsche's headlights. I drove into a network of narrow, sharply winding roads. The houses were old, dark, with overgrown lawns, creating a sense of utter neglect. The streets were completely deserted, not a single light in a window, not a single parked car. I was about to slow down, feeling the compulsion subside, when a flashing light ahead forced me to slam on the brakes. The ABS shrieked dryly, and the 911 stopped just meters from the obstruction. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was a shopping cart sitting squarely in the middle of the road. Not in a parking lot, but right in the center of this quiet residential street. It had been spray-painted matte black and was wrapped with a strip of bright red reflective tape, which was why I saw it, against all better judgment. Against every warning instinct in my head, I parked the car and stepped out. A morbid curiosity overpowered my caution. I felt a strange need to understand the significance of this random, misplaced shopping cart. The night air was warm, humid, and thick with insects buzzing around the headlights. The only sound was the rhythmic ticking of the Porsche's engine cooling down, a sound usually reassuring. But now it felt like a countdown. I approached the cart. It was completely empty, but at the bottom of the wire basket, I noticed a thick layer of reddish-brown grime and a streak of sticky, dried liquid that looked distinctly like old blood. As I turned to head back to the car, I caught movement in my peripheral vision. Too dark. Massive figures suddenly burst out from the thick black woods bordering the road. They weren't walking. They were running at full sprint with unnatural speed, straight toward me. It took my brain a precious second to process. These weren't joggers. This was an ambush. It was fight or flight. I spun around, sprinting back to the Porsche. Pure, raw terror fueled my legs. I practically punched the ignition button. Roar. The engine roared to life just as the figures were nearly at my car window. I threw myself into the driver's seat, slammed the door shut, and stomped on the accelerator. One figure stopped a few feet from the car, standing rigid like a lamppost. But the other didn't stop at all. He ran directly into my passenger side door, striking it with a deafening, echoing thud. The entire car shuddered. He didn't even flinch. It was as if he hadn't prepared for the impact, or his body was made of steel. We were face to face through the thick glass of the Porsche. All my confidence, my pride in speed, in German engineering, vanished. I was frozen in horror. He stared at me with small, deep-set, and sickeningly red eyes. The headlights shone directly on him, exposing the horrific details. His clothes were shredded, nearly rags, and his face was smeared with something dark dirt, or mud, or dried blood, or all three. He had a vacant, soulless expression, yet one of primal aggression. I had never been more terrified in my life. The most repulsive detail was that fresh blood was oozing from somewhere on his body, soaking his tattered shirt, but he didn't seem to notice or care. He began fumbling with the door handle, desperately trying to pry the door open. The small, awful sound of metal scraping metal was terrifying in the quiet night. That sound snapped me back to reality. I quickly maneuvered the car around the damned shopping cart and floored the gas pedal. The Porsche roared and shot away, leaving the two dark figures staring after my taillights. I was intensely conflicted all the way home. A part of me, the human part, felt he needed help. Maybe it was an accident, a group of injured, shocked, and lost people. But the other part, the one that experienced the horrific gaze of those red eyes, screamed, "Drive!" Ultimately, I decided not to turn back. As soon as I was out of that dreadful neighborhood, I pulled over on the highway and reported the incident to the Massachusetts State Police. I described the location, the shopping cart, and the two aggressive figures. They were skeptical but took down my statement. When I arrived home safely, I got out to inspect the car. I needed to assess the damage before my uncle saw it. That's when I realized the extent of the attack. There was a noticeable dent in the passenger side door. But what was more horrifying was the blood splatter everywhere. It was streaked along the side mirror, smeared on the door handle, and even ran in rivulets down the black paneling. The sheer volume of blood was many times more than what I would have expected from that brief collision. It was practically an explosion of blood. I used my car key to carefully pry loose a small scrap of torn cloth clinging to the edge of the door. It was saturated with blood and had a strong metallic stench. The police never found the two men, nor the shopping cart. The investigation was closed as an unsuccessful attack by roadside vagrants. The next morning, my uncle saw the dent and the blood. He was furious, but when I recounted the story with genuine sincerity and shudders, his face shifted from anger to palpable fear. The rational explanation was that the figures were using the shopping cart as bait to lure someone out of their car, a new, brutal form of carjacking. But the way the figure slammed into the car, his inhuman resilience, the vacant and red-rimmed eyes, and most importantly, the unfathomable amount of blood on the vehicle. It didn't feel like a robbery. It felt like an attack by something not entirely human. Something that could sense fear, that had set the cart trap, and was waiting for that strange compulsion to lead a victim right to Maple Street. To this day, every time I drive at night, I am haunted by that compulsion. I fear it wasn't mine, but a call from those dark figures trying to lure me back to that empty road to finish what they started. I wonder if the shopping cart is still out there on Maple Street, waiting for the next victim to be led astray by curiosity and a strange fever.